Chapter 331. Record of the Past. Chief Steward, Luth Damaro Yul. 1. The shadow energy pearl that Luth had taken out looked slightly different from what Jean had seen before. There was a faint black light flowing through it, and it was smaller. Upon close inspection, Jean could see people and landscapes inside it. Instinctively, he knew it was an intact recording device. The visible landscapes inside the pearl were records of the past. I won't be able to remember Miss Luth anymore. What does that mean? Exactly as it sounds. Zippel, his manipulation of history remains effective. Jean had heard a lot about Zippel's manipulation of history, but he had not yet experienced it firsthand. He had only seen issues with other people's memories, especially those related to the ancient Runcandle. That's why he couldn't easily accept it. If it was so vivid, would he really forget Luth's existence once he left this subspace? As if reading Jin's thoughts, Luth gave a bittersweet smile and took out a feather from her embrace. "Give me your hand for a moment," Luth said. She reached out her hand and wrote her name on the palm of Jin's hand. After a while, Jean felt a chill seeing his name written on the palm of his hand. Luth Damaro Yul. Damaro Yul. Yul. The writing of Miss Luth's name on the palm of my hand is disappearing. A chill ran down his spine. Jean already knew that Zippel possessed the ability to manipulate history. However, experiencing it firsthand was a completely different matter. The 1,000-year contractor, Sir Jean, must have visited 2 tombs before. You must have encountered the guardians there. Yes. I met the guardians who looked like Sir Sildaray and Lady Sarah. Indeed, it seems that those individuals have also disappeared from my memories. Unlike them, I am not a guardian formed from shadow energy and soul. That's why I will keep fading from Sir Jin's memories. She was not a guardian formed from shadow energy and soul, but a living person. Therefore, unlike Sildaray or Sarah, who had already faced death, she was continuously being erased from history. It would have been nice to share many stories about the Runcandle of 1,000 years ago, but unfortunately, I have very few memories of that time. The time granted to fairies is as fleeting as that of dragons, if not more so. No existence in this world would want to endure a long period of 1,000 years without even having complete memories. That's why Jean found it hard to choose his words. There's no need to be saddened by that, Sir Jean. The loss of history regarding me is nothing more than a scar of the honor I earned as part of Runcandle, as a protector of the clan and the world. Luth spoke calmly. She had lost most of her memories of the ancient Runcandle, but her blind affection remained intact. The price paid to protect the clan was too cruel, but if there hadn't been such a price, Runcandle would have been completely erased from the world. How is Runcandle now? After Zippel, it's the second most powerful clan in the world. Upon hearing that, Luth beamed with joy. See, it was a sacrifice worth making. Like an excited child, Luth spoke with enthusiastic voice. I told you, Timar. We can surely protect the clan. Jin's gaze met Luth's. Luth looked at Jean for a moment and then lowered her head. Oh, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. It's all right, Miss Luth. There was a moment of silence. Jean was becoming increasingly uncomfortable witnessing the pitiful state of this unfortunate fairy. In my time, the Runcandle clan was almost erased from history. The most powerful clan of magic swordsmen disappeared. Since we made an oath back then, the current Runcandle wouldn't be able to use magic. That's correct. However, Sir Jean, as Sodaret's contractor, the curse that Runcandle received back then won't apply to you. Wawa. Jean formed a mana sphere in the palm of his hand. Luth stared at the sphere in fascination. It's the light, the one we saved. Now I'm the only magic swordsman of Runcandle. Luth also conjured magic. At that moment, a peculiar wave emanated from the shadow energy pearl, and Jean remembered seeing that magic in the past. Recording magic? The magic that Luth was using resembled history recording magic. Hister had been active between 1400 and 1500. It was known that fairies had perished long before that. But the shadow energy pearl began to activate, producing a familiar and soft sound. Could there be any connection between fairies and Hister? Just as he was reflecting, Luth spoke. "You seem a little surprised, Sir Jean. I've seen similar magic before. Not magic, but a special ability unique to our fairy tribe. My kind, we were born with a lifespan close to immortality, but in exchange, the unstable noise of the shadow energy pearl gradually transformed into a smooth sound. It was a sound that the damaged shadow energy pearl had never made before. We have the duty to observe the world and record it. Observing the world and recording it. That was the purpose of the fairy's existence. Although we possess enough power, we have rarely interfered in human affairs. Even when tyrants arose to ravage the world or when human cultures veered in the wrong direction, we merely observed and recorded. That's our role. In that case, Miss Luth, as a fairy, you became a member of Runcandle because Zipple was manipulating history. Jean understood the context and responded, causing Luth to nod. That's correct. If they hadn't distorted history, I wouldn't have met Timar or become the chief steward of Runcandle. Luth Damerau Yull was originally the noblest being among the fairies. The name Yull was reserved only for the fairy king. But at some point I was influenced by Timar and began to consider myself a member of Runcandle. The Storm Castle felt more like my home than the primeval forest, which was my original homeland. Compared to the time spent in the forest, the time spent here feels like nothing more than a dream in a midday nap. Now, even that feeling had been nearly erased from her memories, and Jean couldn't even begin to imagine the sense of loss Luth must be feeling. Ha ha ha. It seems it's not the time to reminisce forgotten memories. Miss Luth. Yes, what is it? By any chance, do you know of a clan called Hister? This is the first time I've heard that name. The members of that clan possess abilities similar to yours, history recording magic. They were destroyed and disappeared at the hands of Zipple, but it turns out I know the last surviving member of Hister. Maybe I can ask that person to restore your memories, Miss Luth. It's an intriguing story, humans using magic similar to ours. However, restoring my memories would be impossible. Nevertheless, we should try. I can't leave this place, and if you leave this space, you will forget everything about me. Therefore, even if you were to ask that person to restore my memories, it wouldn't be feasible, even if that person indeed possesses such abilities. Luth placed her hand on Jin's, resting it on the shadow energy pearl. Still, that doesn't mean a person's existence is completely forgotten. As far as I know, flashes of my appearance also appear in this recording device. I can only show it to you once, so please take a closer look. The magic waves emanating from the shadow energy pearl intensified. At the same time, Jean felt as if his consciousness was being drawn into it, allowing him to examine the memories recorded inside the shadow energy pearl. It was a place where storms raged throughout the seasons, but that day was unusually turbulent. The expressions of the people seated in the conference room of the Storm Castle were grim. On one side of the room, stacks of blank paper, thousands of sheets, were piled up. However, the papers were already slightly crumpled, as if they had been touched by human hands. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Stewards and scholars tirelessly wrote something on new sheets of paper. They were recording the latest events related to the fairies. Hundreds of individuals were simultaneously transcribing the same content with different phrases and interpretations. On March 3, 797, Runcandle recorded Zipple's manipulation of history regarding the fairies. On March 4th, the fairies Shil Damerau, Bikatishka, Mulia's Mon, Tricotretos, and Zen Mainu were forgotten among the fairies. On March 3rd, Runcandle recorded Zipple. While stewards and scholars were recording, the writings were also being erased. It was like pouring water into a leaky jug. However, the stewards and scholars continued to desperately transcribe the same content. They did it out of fear that if they didn't, the fairies would fall into complete oblivion. However, this fear was not imaginary. It was a fear that arose from witnessing something being erased in such a way. But what was even more terrifying was the fact that if the fairies completely disappeared, there was a possibility that Runcandle would be erased from history in the same way. Would Zipple, those insane bastards, really erase the fairies, who lived and breathed In such a way, Diana, one of the 10 great knights, erupted in anger. Everyone else in the room shared her feelings. They all knew. In this way, they could only delay the fairies' disappearance from history, and barely postpone their extinction. Even though they were living beings, once erased from history, they became non-existent from the beginning. No one would recognize them, and they would also be lost. Zippel's power to manipulate history went beyond mere distortion of the truth, and entered the realm of obliterating the truth itself. How can mere humans wield such power? A power that not even the gods possess. If it weren't for the fairies' abilities, we would have never known that Zippel's manipulation of history reached this level. Paidler, one of the 10 great knights, spoke. As he said, if it weren't for the fairies' recording abilities, the Runcandles would have never known the truth. But at this rate, the fairies would soon disappear. No one would be able to record the truth for Runcandle, no, for the world. Crunch! The chief steward, Luth Damerow Yull, entered the conference room. She's here, chief steward. Diana greeted her with a bow, and Luth opened a translucent window in the air using her magic. Everyone, look at this. There is hope. I have discovered that even Zippel's manipulation of history has its limits. Luth exclaimed with a triumphant voice that contrasted with her haggard expression. Recorded on the translucent window were these words. A total of 3,026 magicians, including Ilona Zippel, attempted to manipulate the history of Timar Runcandle, but failed to bend the power of existence he possesses. Chapter 332. Record of the Past. Chief Steward, Luth Damerow Yull 2. Hope. In the face of the transcendent and demonic power of the enemy, this hope was desperately needed. Those gathered in the conference room stared in incomprehension at the words written on the floating window for a long while. Meanwhile, the writings of the stewards and scholars continued to erase. Well done, Chief Steward. According to what's written here, it seems that not even with their twisted ability to manipulate history can they erase our patriarch. Diana grasped Luth's hand and spoke. Ilona Zippel, along with 3,026 magicians. 3026. The significance of that number was none other than the total number of elite magicians within Zippel, which Runcandle had already grasped, and it matched exactly. Furthermore, Ilona Zippel, despite not being the matriarch of the Zippel family, was known as the strongest magician within Zippel. Numerous battles had been fought against her. Timar and the 10 great knights had come to the conclusion that Ilona represented more than half of Zippel's overall power, so there could be no better explanation of her strength than that. Ilona, that monstrous magician, and all the elite magicians had conspired against the patriarch once before. Paidler shivered. He was recalling the memory of restraining Ilona with the other 10 great knights last year. The 10 great knights realized that on that day there was another person in the world who could be called a monster besides Timar. What the hell are they doing to manipulate history? Those damn bastards. It seems there's some connection to the Tower of Tales. Silduray erupted in anger. As he had said, Runcandle still didn't know exactly how Zippel manipulated history. They only knew that manipulation occurred when Zippel's magicians gathered in large numbers at the Tower of Tales. But that was nothing more than speculation. There were several other places suspected of being where history manipulation occurred. Since the Patriarch had already decided to prioritize the destruction of Zippel's magic towers, answers would soon be revealed. They still couldn't attack the main house of the Ludero-Magical Federation, Draka. It was because Ilona constantly defended it. Magic towers were being destroyed without issues. Except for the locations used by Zippel as their main strongholds, more than 100 magic towers had already been destroyed. Lady Sarah Runcandle, one of the 10 great knights, has returned. Guardian Knight rushed into the conference room and spoke. Upon hearing that, Luth and the 10 great knights simultaneously began to run to greet Sarah. They had been waiting all this time for either Timar or Sarah to return. The two were leading the other 10 great knights in the attack on Zippel's magic towers. Luth and the 10 great knights were so eager that they didn't even bother to shield themselves from the pouring rain as they ran to meet Sarah. Sarah, Lady Sarah, it seems you were all eagerly waiting for me. You're not puppies, you know? It's embarrassing to see you all running towards me like this. Sarah smiled as she looked at her approaching comrades. Even in the pouring rain that seemed to have torn the sky apart, a strong smell of ash and burnt emanated from her. It was a testament to how intense the battle she had just fought had been. Especially Paidler, this weakling would catch a cold if he got wet. Haha. What happened? Sarah, did you manage to destroy the enemy's magic towers? No, it wasn't possible. If there were more magicians like Alona, would you believe it? Sildare, as terrible as it was, I managed to destroy about 50 before giving up and returning. What, are you serious? Only Sildare fell for Sarah's feeble lie. Fooled again, Sildare. Haha, you're letting yourself be deceived by my deception. It's not easy for me to stop making jokes when you get fooled so easily. What? Is it a lie again? Yes. Do you think there would be another crazy monster like that in the world? Anyway, you have the nice side of being a fool. I did it to ease the feeling of your blood drying up while waiting for me. That's what older sisters do. You're 5 years younger than me, and yet you're my older sister. The other comrades had already realized that Sarah's mission had been successful at the point where she lied. Whenever Sarah showed a playful mood, that's how it was. Well, for now, we've destroyed all the towers assigned to our side. Well, my brother, or rather, the Patriarch, had only a few more than us, but it seems I've turned about 10,000 magicians into ashes. Indeed, Sarah was undoubtedly the strongest among the 10 great knights. The number of magicians she killed had no imaginary figures mixed in. The Patriarch must have finished on his part soon. But it's strange. Although there are more towers to destroy on his side, I thought the Patriarch would finish before us. The towers the group of Sarah planned to destroy were 20 in total. The towers the group of Timar planned to destroy were 40. Despite the double difference, Timar's power was enough to compensate for that gap. Why does it feel strange? Did I really defeat the Patriarch after a long time? No, that's not possible. Something can't have happened on the Patriarch side, right? We were constantly monitoring Alona's location, so there shouldn't be any problems on the Patriarch's part. It's probably because the secret movement of your magic sword is complete. I knew it, didn't I? Well, I finished off the last 5 towers completely. Zippel's magicians melted like butter. Seriously, can't you refrain from using expressions like melted when referring to humans? Paidler frowned and spoke, and Sarah shrugged. For me, humans refers to those who are not enemies of Runcandle, weakling. You're pretending to be surprised when you already know. Still, it's not good for your emotions. Am I a teenager? Spend your time taking care of your health instead of worrying about my emotions. Sarah laughed, ruffling Paidler's hair. With Sarah's arrival, along with the hope brought by Luth, the heavy expressions on the faces of the 10 great knights quickly eased. Lady Sarah, take a look at this. Luth once again displayed a translucent window in front of her. Eh? What's this, Luth? Alona Zippel and 3,026 magicians. Oh, that's very good news. My brother, no, the Patriarch, is really amazing, isn't he? Of course, we still can't relax completely. Even though Alona Zippel and all the elite magicians are included, the Patriarch and the second in command of Zippel were not. Zippel used the Patriarch and the second in command, as well as 500 elite magicians, to manipulate the history of the fairy race. This was also confirmed by Luth's record ability. Naturally, one should not underestimate the power of the Patriarch and the second in command. They may have been inferior to Alona, but they were individuals who had reached a transcendent realm in their own right. That level of power was needed to erase the history of the fairy race, which spanned thousands of years. The fact that, even with greater power, they couldn't manipulate Timar's history made Luth feel fortunate and bitter at the same time. Her own race was still being forgotten at this very moment. Furthermore, it was sad to think that the thousands of years of time and history accumulated by her own race could be considered less valuable than a simple human named Timar. The power of existence. Luth couldn't exactly comprehend the meaning of what was written in the record window. Sensing her thoughts, Sarah placed her hand on Luth's shoulder. Chief Steward, I know what you're thinking, but it's just my opinion. I believe this power of existence isn't something simple. It's about how much change a person brings to the world. That's the norm. The reason why Zippel couldn't manipulate the history of my brother Timar like they did with the fairy race is because he's bringing significant changes to the world. So, does Lady Sarah's words mean that the more influential one's existence is in changing the world, the harder it is for Zippel to manipulate their history? Yes, Timar is completely reshaping the world right now, right? The fairy race, being observers and guardians of records, has the role of not actively changing the world. Luth pondered for a moment. It could be interpreted that way, Lady Sarah. Of course, it's just speculation to a certain extent. But it seems plausible. Honestly, I don't think Timar's value as an individual surpasses that of the entire fairy race. Among various beings, it's difficult to definitively say which is superior. The other 10 great knights nodded. When Luth first brought the news, they were glad, but they also worried about Luth just like Sarah. Thank you for your concern. Well, compared to what the chief steward does for us, it's infinitely insufficient. Now, should we lend a hand to the chief steward and the scholars? The more help, the better, right? As Sarah leaned on Paidler's shoulder and spoke, Luth's pupils naturally widened as she had been staring at the recording window. Wait a moment. What is this? In the face of Luth's newly alarmed voice, the 10 great knights couldn't help but feel uneasy. Chief Steward, what's wrong, huh? As Diana approached Luth, she saw the recording window and fell silent. Or rather, her words didn't stop, but she was rendered speechless. Others who saw the recording window had similar reactions to Diana. In the recording window, phrases were being generated that they couldn't make sense of. On March 3, 797, Timar Runcandle and the 10 great knights following him destroyed 5 of Zippel's towers in the Palin kingdom. There were no casualties on Runcandle's side and no survivors on Zippel's side. On March 3, Timar Runcandle and the 10 great knights Zippel's towers destroyed Timar Runcandle and they were disappearing. These were records of Timar and the 10 great knights destroying today's Zippel's towers. But the shock that Luth and the 10 great knights would receive didn't end there. On June 6, 740, Cleo Zippel ordered her subordinates to construct 5 towers in the Palin kingdom. On August 2, 743, Zippel's magicians were deployed in the completed towers. The heads of each of the 5 collateral families of the Zippel family were appointed as tower masters. On January 5, 744, the heads of the collateral families resigned from their positions as tower masters and were replaced by pure-blooded Zippels. On December 20, 750, the contents of the recording window were continuously updating, and the latest updated information consisted of records like this. On March 3, 797, the 5 towers of Zippel in the Palin kingdom are intact. These towers have remained unchanged since their completion, never having been attacked from the outside. For the past 57 years. Chapter 333. Record of the Past. Chief Steward, Luth Damaro Yull, 3. What is this nonsense? Sildaray shouted. The recording ability of the fairies, including Luth, had never shown a single lie. However, now clearly false contents were being described in the recording window. The 5 magic towers of the Palin kingdom had been attacked by Runcandle's forces the year before and the year before that. Ugh! Luth suddenly vomited. It was a vomit born of the discomfort of the sudden manipulation of history. The act of witnessing how reality is manipulated in real time is an event that shakes the human mind more than one can imagine. We have to tell the scholars. We have to write it down, we have to. Diana shouted as Sarah held Luth, who was about to faint. According to her, everyone present should continue recording this phenomenon before completely forgetting that history was being manipulated. Upon hearing her, the nearby guardian knights hurried into the castle. Chief Steward, wake up. We must not forget that what is written in this recording window is false. Chief Steward. Luth trembled but didn't respond. Soon, she lost consciousness and collapsed, leaving only the perplexed Voices of the 10 great knights in the furious storm. Half a year had passed. The stewards and scholars of Storm Castle no longer recorded the history of the fairies. It was because they had already been forgotten by the people of the world. The existence of the fairies had disappeared completely, as if they had never existed in the first place, but they did not vanish entirely from the memory of some people. However, the fact that the fairy queen, Luth Dameroyul, had met Timar Runcandle by chance and they had fought together against Zippel, the fact that the entire fairy tribe had fought desperately, shedding blood, to prevent Zippel from manipulating history had been erased. Even the people now remembered that the fairy tribe had perished in ancient times. However, thousands of fairies, forgotten by people and forgotten by themselves, still lived and breathed. "I'm sorry, Luth." A man spoke as he looked at Luth's back. It was Timar. "The patriarch has nothing to apologize for." When Timar didn't respond, Luth continued. "Do you really think the fairy tribe was erased from history because I met you, patriarch?" "Yes, if you hadn't met me, the fairy tribe wouldn't have been a victim of Zippel." Patriarch, stop talking nonsense. When Zippel manipulated history, what would have been their first target to eradicate? Runcandle? No, those people would have eliminated the fairy tribe first, regardless of Runcandle. In reality, after becoming Runcandle's chief steward, Luth had discovered the fact that Zippel was manipulating the history of the fairy tribe while examining the records. She and Timar had met 5 years ago, but the manipulation of the fairy tribe's history had begun 8 years ago. That's why she didn't consider the erasure of the fairy tribe's history to be Timar's responsibility. Rather, she felt profound gratitude towards Timar. If she hadn't met him by now, she too would have been lost like other members of the fairy tribe, forgotten by people. Thanks to the immense power of existence that the patriarch possesses, I was still able to remain, not forgotten, and fight against Zippel alongside Runcandle. So, please, don't apologize to me again. Timar nodded heavily. And I, patriarch, and the 10 great knights, have not forgotten that the fairy tribe fought alongside Runcandle against Zippel, have we? Lord Soderette, Sir Murakan, and Lady Misha haven't forgotten either. The power of existence that Timar possessed. It wasn't a power limited only to Timar. Beings deeply influenced by Timar also enjoyed the benefits of that power. Thanks to that, the individuals mentioned by Luth a moment ago still had a clear understanding of the history of the fairy tribe. However, as time passed, even they were gradually forgetting the fairy tribe. The two of them were not unaware of this fact. Timar was the only one completely free from Zippel's manipulation of history. Even when Runcandle attacked the magic towers of the Palin Kingdom half a year ago, Timar was the only one who saw through the falseness of the history being manipulated in real time. But human memory, inevitably it would fade with time. Moreover, memories were like people. They couldn't exist on their own. If there were no others to listen to or confirm those memories, over time, they would have no power within oneself. They would lose their meaning. I'm worried about you, patriarch. What is there to worry about? Everyone relies too much on the patriarch. Lately, it seems like the patriarch is trying to bear too many people, since he realized that his influence could delay Zippel's manipulation of history. Timar had been trying to keep as many people around him as possible. There were already many people around me from the beginning. That's true, but you haven't met with people as frequently and without sleep as now. When was the last time you closed your eyes, patriarch? 10 days ago. More or less, I guess. But, sleeping, well, it's not really my thing. Even you, patriarch, are ultimately human. You're not a god or a demon. If you continue like this, your mind will be overwhelmed, patriarch. There were signs of movement from outside. Patriarch, chief steward. Sarah entered the office with a serious expression. It must be bad news, thought Timar and Luth. When Sarah wasn't being playful, it always meant something serious. Since this morning, Paidler has started to forget the history of the fairy tribe. Even if he tries to remember, it doesn't seem to work. Even when the other 10 great knights who still remembered tried to tell Paidler about the fairy tribe, he couldn't understand the content at all. Even after hearing the story, he would forget it again within a few minutes. The world was becoming a massive theater, steeped in Zippel's flavor. Within that theater, members of Runcandle were gradually being consumed by fear. No matter how strong each one's mental fortitude was, it was impossible to continuously endure the crumbling of known reality. We need a way to leave records that those bastards can never touch. Sarah spoke, biting her lower lip. Patriarch, no. Orboni, it doesn't seem possible. I will go meet that witch residing in the Black Sea. Lokia said that if it's the witch, she might know a way to stop Zippel's manipulation of history. Lokia was one of the 10 great knights. She was a mage with better magical abilities than swordsmanship in Runcandle. Sarah, you can't do that. Why? That woman is a disaster. We don't know what might happen if we approach her clumsily. Orboni. Sarah took a deep breath and continued. If things continue like this, Runcandle will be destroyed. Not only the fairy tribe, but also the history concerning Runcandle has begun to be manipulated. If Halurim is awakened, it won't be Runcandle but the world that could face destruction. A world without Runcandle makes no sense to me. Sarah, everyone relies only on you, Orboni. We want to do something too, even if it's little. Instead of being defenseless like this, I'd rather sell my soul to the devil. I'll pretend I didn't hear that, Sarah, and tell Lokia not to bring up anything about Halurim in the future. When Sarah didn't respond, Timar gently embraced her. I understand it's difficult, but I have a plan. Soon, along with Sodaret, I'll meet with the other gods. Will the gods help us? It's not certain, but according to Sodaret, it seems they will manifest themselves. Sarah reluctantly nodded. Although she possessed the greatest power among the 10 great knights, she found it difficult to bear the fact that she couldn't do anything. And I say this with concern, but please, under no circumstances disobey my orders and contact Halurim. It's an order as patriarch. I understand. The siblings were lying to each other. Sodaret had already failed to persuade the gods, and Sarah had no intention of obeying Timar's order. She didn't trust most of the gods who had already submitted to Zippel. As Sarah left, Timar let out a deep sigh. It seems she's going to cause trouble. I should ask Diana to keep an eye on Sarah. In truth, Timar and Luth, they had already considered the worst-case scenario. They had witnessed how Sodaret had attempted to leave messages for the 1,000-year contractor. Luth, in particular, had assisted Sodaret in this process. Of course, it didn't mean they had given up on fighting against Zippel. They simply had the grim intuition that this terrible and prolonged battle might continue even after their era had passed. That's why preparations were needed for the next generation, and the generation after that, and the generation after that. It was only natural since they lacked certainty of victory in their own time. But Sarah's words were not without merit. Luth. Yes, my lord. Directly contacting Halurim is dangerous, but if it's about his lover, the situation might be different. Find out the whereabouts of the demon beast King Orgel for me. Wow. The recording device's records reached their limit. Jean couldn't say anything for a while, lost in thought. You've seen it all. What do you think? Luette asked. It's shocking. I didn't know Zippel's manipulation of history went to such extremes. For decades, no, the fact that they could manipulate the history of the fairy tribe, which had existed for tens of thousands of years at their whim, could be stated with certainty. Not even the gods could achieve such a feat. That's why the records probably mention how the gods submitted to Zippel. For the first time, doubt arose as to whether it was possible to defeat Zippel. However, Jean quickly shook off that thought. If those bastards were still as formidable as 1,000 years ago, Runcandle wouldn't have existed. Surely, when they defeated Runcandle back then, they paid an extremely high price for it. Although the exact nature of that price couldn't be discerned from the current records, Jean had obtained the most important information from this recording device out of all of Sodaret's recording devices he had examined so far. Especially Zippel's transcendental abilities were more palpable than ever. My master is the key to confronting Zippel. Jin's thoughts naturally drifted to that point. Sir Jean, it's been 2 days outside. Luth spoke. 2 days. Jean was surprised and looked into Luth's eyes. If 2 days had passed, there might have been an attack on the caves of the small beastmen by someone from among their enemies. I'll be back as soon as possible, to make sure no one gets hurt. Jean remembered the promise he had made to Neru. Judging by your expression, it seems there's an urgent matter outside. There are people I promised to rescue. Because of my presence here, the small beastmen are in mortal danger. Then you should leave quickly. Luth's resolute response weighed heavy on Jin's heart. If I leave this place, Miss Luth will be alone again. I'll forget about Miss Luth. Luth nodded silently. You'll only remember my image that you saw on the recording device. But Sir Jean, in reality, I'm practically a forgotten person. Rescuing the living outside is more valuable than soothing my loneliness. I'll come back. Definitely. There were too many small beastmen who could die without Jean knowing, and it was too uncertain to hesitate out of compassion. Luth offered a faint smile, recalling Timar's appearance, who once said the same thing as Jean. Chapter 334. Debt, debts, and more debts. 1. I will definitely come back. Those words ceased to have meaning the moment Jean exited the subspace. He forgot everything he had shared with Luth Dameroyul alive. Her appearance, the clothes she wore, her red hair, her voice, and everything else. He even forgot the fact that 2 days had already passed inside the subspace. This was because Luth had told him. Outside, the beach remained the same, with mysterious and solitary purple stars twinkling. Jean stared at the stars for a moment, lost in thought. Entering the third tomb, I have the feeling I met someone. Or did I just confirm the appearance of the old storm castle? Jean felt an odd sense of emptiness. And I haven't even fought in any battles. Why this nausea? Or is it that I participated in such a massive battle that my memories and body have been affected? It seemed unlikely, but a feeling of nausea welled up from within him, as if he had pushed his body to the limit. A chilling sensation, as if insects were crawling all over his body, spread, and he broke out in a cold sweat. Phew! Taking a deep breath, Jean recalled what he had experienced in the subspace. The subspace appeared to be a recreation of the old storm castle, and as always, he checked the recording device. However, no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't remember how he had checked the recording device. It was as if someone had handed it to him, or perhaps he had found it by opening a little box, or maybe it had started working automatically upon entering the tomb. Mr. Neru said there was definitely someone inside. So he asked me to convey his gratitude for the hardships of the last 1,000 years. Who were they? Weren't they inside? As doubts gnawed at him, the faces of the old run candle he confirmed with the recording device came to mind. Timar, Chief Steward Luth Dameroyul, the 10 great knights, the stewards and scholars recording the history of the forgotten fairy tribe. Among them, strangely, when he thought of Luth Dameroyul, a member of the fairy tribe, a strange feeling of oppression welled up on one side of his chest. Despite not having seen her even once, a longing and bittersweet emotion surged within Jean. Jean only remembered Luth from the records. Ah! While thinking about the ancient run candle from the recording device, Jean remembered the problem he had forgotten. The small beast men. I must hurry to rescue them. A faint burnt smell reached Jin's nostrils. It was definitely a smell he couldn't detect when he first entered this beautiful cat tribe's realm. It wasn't the smell of fire used for cooking or heating the body. Quickly, Jean turned his head and held his breath. The forest behind the beach was on fire. Except for Jean, no human had ever set foot on that mystical beach, and now it was being consumed by flames. His heart filled with anguish. Now that he thought about it, even after exiting the subspace, he hadn't seen the cat tribe member named Neru. Mr. Neru! While shouting and getting ready to run, Jean glimpsed Neru in the distance. Mr. Neru, are you all right? Jean, run candle. Neru panted, his body covered in sweat. Neru had no visible injuries. Have you already been attacked? Shortly after entering Timar's tomb, this place was exposed. It hadn't been more than 5 hours since Jean entered the tomb. The secret hideout had started. Being attacked, and the members of the cat tribe, including Neru, were desperately defending, using all the powers they had. Under normal circumstances, they should have sensed danger and escaped when it was exposed. In fact, the cat tribe members had been feeling intense danger 3 hours before the enemy invasion began. But the cat tribe members couldn't escape. If they fled, not only would Timar's tomb be exposed, but their 1,000-year promise with the Soderette would also be in jeopardy. Especially with Jean inside, if Timar's tomb collapsed under an attack, Jean would be trapped in it forever. The cat tribe members had used most of the sacred relics granted to them by the ancient cat god to repel the attacks. To buy time, they had erected barriers with relics that had been safeguarded for thousands of years. Neru didn't inform Jean of this fact. Neru believed that even if Jean knew, it would only create a sense of helplessness in him. Who the hell are they? Jean muttered quietly. The Zippel, it wasn't entirely unexpected. It could be Joshua's Runcandle family, Zippel, or Kinselo. Jean had anticipated one of the three, but he couldn't consider himself lucky. Listen closely, Jean Runcandle. From now on, run relentlessly to the other side of the beach, until you encounter a cat tribe member named Lulu. Then Lulu will guide you to a safe place. Are you telling me to run alone? That's the best option. What will become of you, Mr. Neru, the cat tribe members, and the small beastmen? If I escape, can they get away? Neru couldn't answer. I'd rather buy time so the cat tribe members can escape with the small beastmen. Like the Black Knights, Zippel has a group of elite magicians called the Spectre Corps. There were 5 of them who attacked us. I know you're strong, but against them you can't afford to buy time. Spectre Corps. As soon as he heard the name, Jin's face hardened. During his time as a provisional flag-bearer, Jin had experienced the formidable skills of the Spectre Corps. They sent that secret elite unit, the Spectre Corps, to capture the cat tribe members and the small beast men and attack my business. Are you serious? According to Neru, the reason Zippel targeted the small beast men was Jin's cosmetics business. It was a passage he couldn't quite grasp, but at the same time made him think that Zippel had individuals with a good head on their shoulders. Someone who saw how my cosmetics business would elevate the Runcandle's influence among the public. Or they discovered the existence of the third tomb of Timar in this place. Either way, the horrifying fact remained that the Spectre Corps had arrived. In addition, our barrier has reached its limit. It has already been 2 days since they entered the tomb. What, 2 days? Jin's eyes widened. He never thought so much time had passed. He couldn't quite remember what had happened inside the third tomb, and his mind grew confused once more upon realizing that 2 days had passed. Yes, within an hour. We can't hold out any longer. So please, run quickly. Crack. Jin clenched his teeth. I can't do that. If it's because of the guilt that the small beastmen might die because of you, we will do our best to keep them alive. They are still inside the barrier, so they are safe for at least an hour. I need you to tell me their location. We have several entrances to our secret space besides the cave. They are currently breaking the barriers of each entrance, but we don't know the exact direction. However, what's certain is that all the cave entrances are connected, so eventually, they will converge there. Jin could instinctively understand. Neru and the cat tribe members had a plan to protect the small beastmen by sacrificing themselves. It was true. In fact, the cat tribe members had used the last sacred relic. They had to evacuate the small beastmen and had prepared to die in that place. As long as Jin was inside the tomb, it would be impossible to achieve. Even the slightest opening in the barrier made of sacred relics would increase the chances of the enemies entering the cave through this place. The small beastmen in the cave were aware that they were under attack. They trembled in fear within the confines of the activated barrier, fearing suffocation. Is it possible to save them all? Honestly, I can't guarantee that we can save everyone. From the start, it was a remarkable feat to have resisted the specters for 2 days and be able to save some of the small beastmen. However, Jin couldn't retreat unless he was certain that everyone would survive, even if he fled. At this moment, he didn't grow stronger by using someone as a shield to escape. Of course, he couldn't rely solely on a sense of righteousness or naive justice. He had no intention of finding death so easily. I have experience in buying time against a large number of the specters. If something happens to you, then my 1,000-year promise will be in vain. I'm not saying I'll fight just because I don't want the small beast men to die. If I engage in battle with them, someone from my family or from Kinsalo will definitely come. How would the Runcandles and Kinsalo know that you're fighting? There's only one magic swordsman in the world who uses shadow energy and lightning. And I am the flag-bearer of Runcandle, and the Jean Kingdom is the domain of Huffister. Moreover, the land of the Beastmen is within Kinsalo's territory, so they have more than enough justification to get involved. If Jean were to engage in combat with the specters near the cave, there was no reason for Runcandle and Kinsalo to stand idly by. Jean planned to orchestrate a battle with the specters as grandly as possible to provoke the participation of both forces. The key is whether I can hold out against the 5 members of the Spectre Corps until reinforcements from my family and Kinsalo arrive. And I must do it while protecting the small beastmen. But as long as he could hold out, he could save everyone. No matter how powerful Zippel was, they couldn't afford to cause a commotion in the territories of other major powers. If the knights from my family come, it would distort the purpose of disguising Bellup. It would be seen as an accident of my own doing, and the disciplinary case that the chief of civil guards is trying to suppress would resurface. But that was still better than having all the small beastmen dead. If luck was on his side, it might be a problem that could be overlooked. But what if the Runcandles and Kinsalo don't come to the battlefield? I will find a way to escape and survive. The 1,000 years that so many people sacrificed for me will not be in vain. What is your reason for being so loyal to the small beastmen? A long time ago, Peng told me that, among the small beastmen, the principle is that those who gain the sympathy of the cat tribe will be welcomed regardless of reason or race. That's something the small beastmen created among themselves? But even before I met Mr. Nehru, I was always well received by the small beastmen. I even owed them my life. That's why I'm loyal to them. I can't bear to see my newly started business fail. Nehru looked at Jean. And as I mentioned before, the Jean Kingdom is Runcandle's land. That means it's my land. And fleeing from here would mean I'm not qualified to be Runcandle's flag-bearer. Chapter 335. Debt, Debts, and More Debts. 2. Nehru closed his eyes as if in deep contemplation. It wasn't that he didn't care about saving the small beastmen. On the contrary, he wanted to save them even more than Jean did. That's why Nehru and the cat tribe had resolved to face death. As if making a decision, Nehru met Jin's gaze. All right, but you must keep your promise. If it looks like you're going to die, you must escape. Jean nodded and took out the ruby. Naya! Shuri approached with a cheerful cry and rubbed her face against Jin's cheek. In response, Nehru's eyes widened. My goodness, it's the witch Hiluram's cat. Note, it seems Shuri is female. I see you recognize her. I've read in the newspapers of the human world that you travel on a ruby cat, but I never imagined it would be Shuri. Naya, nya. Although the meaning wasn't clear, Shuri also seemed to recognize Nehru. They even nuzzled their noses together as if they were very familiar with each other. Naya. For a while, they communicated in their own incomprehensible language, which Jean couldn't understand. But their adorable appearance made the dire situation seem less grim. While conversing with Shuri, Nehru's expression kept changing. When he heard the story of how Shuri had been abandoned and cursed with immortality by the witch Hiluram, his expression darkened. And when he heard that Shuri had been alone in the Black Sea forest for 1,000 years, tears filled his eyes. And he smiled when he learned that she had met Jean and left the forest. Not only did Nehru's expression change, but Shuri also had large watery pupils that gleamed and emitted purring sounds as if she was enchanted. Nehru, once the conversation was finished, turned to Jean with a much lighter expression. Shuri endured terrible 1,000 years as well. Jean Runcandle, maybe even Shuri meeting you was part of Soderet's plan. For moments like this, Naya, the reason for Nehru's lighter expression was none other than that. In his view, as long as Shuri was present, Jean could escape from pursuers at any time. You didn't have to worry about helping the small beast men. I'd love to have a longer conversation with Shuri, but for now, it's best to go see them. Jean climbed onto Shuri's back. Mr. Neru, will you stay here? I have to maintain the barrier, so I can't leave this place. As I told you before, head to that beach over there, find Lulu, and ask her to guide you to a safe place, preferably a cave. Understood. Just as Jean was about to set off with Shuri, Neru affectionately grabbed Shuri's leg. Jean and Shuri turned to look at Neru. Thank you. Jean Runcandle. Neru wanted to express his gratitude. You're welcome. Thanks to riding on Shuri, Jean quickly found Lulu. Lulu was exactly like Neru, making it difficult to distinguish between the twins when looking at them up close. Neru, Lulu, and Miru, the triplets, formed the core of the cat tribe's barrier. What, Shuri? How long has it been? No. How is it that you're alive? Lulu was visibly delighted to see Shuri, just like Neru. However, Jean thought they couldn't have a long conversation, so he explained the situation and expressed his intention to go to the cave. Lulu briefly greeted Shuri and led Jean back to the cat tribe's cave. Once you reach the cave, we can only maintain the barrier for a maximum of 10 minutes. Taking travel time into account, be careful because the specters will immediately enter the cave as soon as the barrier breaks. During the 2 days of continuous specter attacks, there was not a single safe spot left in the cave. Each time the barriers took a hit, the cave would tremble or the interior would shake. The gold-coated rocks would shatter, and the tools of the Watertails tribe were completely destroyed. The small beast men huddled under an improvised net hanging from the ceiling, trembling in fear. So, the small beast men could only look to Jean, who had returned, as their savior. Jean Runcandle. Jean is here. Well, he's here. Jean. Peng Song and Dark Flame all shouted at once. The gazes of the small beast men all fell upon Jean simultaneously. Fortunately, amidst the misfortune, none of the small beast men were severely injured. Thanks to the net set up by the cat tribe, not even falling rocks caused any harm. Is everyone all right? What the heck happened? The earthquake started shortly after you followed the cat tribe. The cave is blocked. The cave was blocked not by the attack but by the barrier. The Zipple magicians are attacking the cat tribe's barrier. The barrier will break in 10 minutes. Everyone needs to escape. Gather only what's strictly necessary as soon as possible. Jean briefly explained the imminent danger, why the Zipple magicians were attacking this place, and how the cat tribe defended against them. Naturally, he also conveyed the fact that he was the cause of the attack, but the small beast men didn't blame him at all. It's all right, Jean. We can handle it. And escape. For goodness sake, don't open your mouth until it's safe. Get ready to run. Can't you see it? Everyone. Someone must have realized that our cosmetics business was about to explode. Very soon, Zipple, Vermont, and Kinselo will come after us. Peng clenched his fist and spoke. That's right. We made a contract with you at such a ridiculous price precisely for moments like this. Seeing that you didn't flee alone proves it was a good contract. Peng deliberately spoke as if it were no big deal. He didn't want the other small beast men to get even more anxious. Peng had a strong intuition that the situation was dire. When the barrier collapses, the Zipple magicians will either enter the cave directly or get close. I'll give you some time, so everyone has to escape. There were a total of about 150 small beast men inside the cave. Jean wanted to save them all. Thinking about how to make it possible was futile. The Spectre's reasons for the attack, their intentions, and everything else were still unknown. He needed to know what the enemy wanted in order to respond appropriately. It's more likely that their goal is to ruin my business rather than sniff around Timar's tomb. Besides, I was a wanted criminal by the Ludero-Magical Federation until last year. From Zipple's perspective, it must have been intolerable for someone like me to boldly advertise cosmetics in their territory. It wasn't just a matter of being intolerable. Since the start of the advertising campaign, most of Zipple's elders had been consumed by anger and couldn't sleep at night. That's why Zipple sent the elite magician's secret division, the Spectre Corps. Recently, Zipple's elders had developed unfavorable feelings towards Runcandle. Not only did they make Jean, a wanted criminal by the Lutero Magical Federation, their flag bearer, but they also dared to advertise cosmetics in Zippel's territory. Therefore, the assault on the cave was a justified action. If I play my cards right, maybe I can turn this situation to my advantage. If I can rescue just the small beast men, I might be able to use my clan as a shield for my business in the future. Crack, crack. Among the small beast men bustling to gather their belongings, an unexpected sound of something breaking and exploding was heard. It was the sound of the invisible barrier of the cat tribe being shattered. Following the sound of the rupture, cracks in the air appeared out of nowhere. From these cracks, a powerful flow of mana could be felt. It was the mana of the Spectre Core. Hey Jean, our comrade. After saving us, you must definitely escape too. Swoosh. Jean unsheathed his signet. Why worry about me? When the barrier collapses, run straight to the entrance. Judging by the mana flow, it seems like the enemies enter the cave immediately after breaking the barrier. Now go. Run to the entrance. Once outside the cave, seek protection from the run candles through the Jean Kingdom. Mention that it's an order from the 12th flag bearer. When the barrier breaks, the sealed entrance of the cave will open. Understood. Promise to come back alive. Okay? And don't think we'll blame you if we suffer because of you. It's not entirely untrue, but we already decided to accept this level of danger when we chose to work with you in the first place. Jean, don't hurt yourself, thank you. It's not thank you. It's thank you very much. All right, enough with the compliments. Let's go, Watertails. We're just going to be a hindrance to our comrade. Excuse me. It's not, excuse me. It's, I'm sorry. Never mind. Let's go. Let's go. The Golden Snow tribe pushed the Watertails forward. Jean couldn't help but chuckle, even though they had every right to be resentful towards him. Seeing that the small beast men didn't blame Jean made him think it was a good decision to come and save them. As the small beast men fled, they looked at Jean several times. Although they were completely unfamiliar with mana, they could sense it. They felt the tremendous power flowing into the cave as the barrier broke. The mana felt beyond the barrier. I was expecting this, but there's no chance of winning in a direct confrontation. 3 members of the Spectre Corps. They were no less formidable than 3 Black Knights. It wasn't an easy task even for Luna to face 3 Black Knights at once. For Jean, at this moment, it was obviously impossible. However, Jean decided that there might be an opportunity. Beyond buying time, he could inflict significant damage on the Spectre Corps or even kill them. They don't know I'm here. As formidable as the Spectre Corps was, they couldn't predict that Jean was inside the cave. Of course, the Spectre Corps could perfectly respond to unexpected variables. If the enemy was strong in the common sense, they could handle it. Swoosh! Shadow energy spread from Jin's body, quickly extending throughout the cave and shrouding it like a curtain. Shadow energy expanded so rapidly that it filled the cave, completely concealing Jean. It was the release of shadow energy, extended to erase his presence. Jean, covered in shadow energy, looked like a shadow among the various shadows scattered on the cave walls. Jean remembered the day he sowed terror at Mummit's Moonlit Tavern when he was in the intermediate class. The attack Jean was about to attempt now was the same as back then, completely hiding his presence and energy with shadow energy and unleashing it at an unexpected moment. Back then, he had spent hours accumulating shadow energy while sitting in an room, but now that amount of time was more than enough, especially in such a confined space as this. Crunch, crunch. The barrier began to crumble completely. Whoosh! And within the curtain of shadow energy, a small spark ignited. That spark was the reason Jean erased his own presence. Even if they were members of the Spectre Corps, they wouldn't be able to perceive the mana of that small spark beyond the barrier and the curtain of shadow energy. That spark was the ignition point of Runcandle's secret sword movement. I'll finish them off in one strike as soon as they arrive. Not even the specters will emerge unscathed if they're hit by a surprise attack. Chapter 336. Debt, Debts, and More Debts. 3. The crack in the barrier had opened almost completely, revealing the other side. It was one of the secret spaces of the cat tribe. Confirmation of the Spectre Core's appearance still couldn't be made. Break a bit later. Due to haste, Jean couldn't fully release his movement. If the Spectre Core entered the cave 5 seconds later, no, even 3 seconds before completing the movement, it was highly likely that Jean would be the first to be attacked. He was certain of it. If that happened, he would be defeated. Assuming the enemy consisted of 3 high-level mages in the late stages of 9 stars. 3 seconds was more than enough time for skilled individuals to kill their opponent 10 times over. Especially in a situation like the current one, where he was exposed and defenseless because he was participating in the decisive battle. I need to focus. Not losing composure at times like this was one of Jin's greatest strengths. Within the curtain of shadowy force, Jin's eyes were engulfed in flames. The flames emanated from his body and spread across the dark curtain. Those flames looked like fierce beasts held by loose chains. When Jin wished, he could pull back the curtain, and the flames would spread in all directions, engulfing his enemies. Time seemed to flow slowly. Among the intense beats of his own heart, mana flowed through the runes inscribed on Jin's body to trigger the movement. The mana of the Spectre Core was becoming increasingly immense. Even within the confines of the curtain, Jin felt a tingling on his face from the overflowing mana. Whoosh, crackle, boom. The sound of Jin's flames spreading and the sound of the barrier shattering intermingled chaotically. Crack. As the barrier broke, a deafening roar echoed in Jin's head. They're coming. Soon, Jin saw the Spectre Core's bodies. He could only see blurry silhouettes in the distorted space covered by the curtain and the shattered barrier. Jin, the most elite of Zippel's mages in gray robes, gripped his sword's hilt tightly. Fortunately, Jin's movement was complete. Before they arrived, the flames first enveloped Jin's body. Then they permeated it, turning Jin into the very fire itself. Jin's burning eyes became even more intense, and even his hair turned into flames. I'll settle that debt, Spectres. Since the day Jin fled from Baradin's mansion, leaving only Misha behind, he often thought about it after becoming a flag-bearer. If he had been stronger, he could have fought alongside Misha. It was never an act of dishonor for Runcandle's reserve flag-bearer to flee from 15 Spectres. But Jin felt shame when he remembered that day. It was time to erase that feeling. Runcandle's secret sword movement. Hellfire. Sarah Runcandle. When Jin inherited this magic sword technique from Sarah, Jin had liked the name Hellfire from the moment he received the sword. When he remembered all the atrocities committed by the Spectre Core, there seemed to be no more fitting name than Hellfire for the act of engulfing them in flames. Qua! The sharp flames tore through the curtain and spread outward. As soon as the specters crossed the barrier, they were met with these sharp flames, leaving them no choice but to widen their eyes in surprise. Ha! A member of the Spectre Corps exclaimed and erected a protective shield. The shield, wrapped in flames, trembled unsteadily. The shield seemed on the verge of breaking. At first glance, it appeared incapable of withstanding the power of Hellfire, and Jin clicked his tongue inwardly. Can they really withstand this with a shield they haven't even properly forged? There wouldn't be many mages in the world capable of such a feat. Besides, the Spectres had just spent a significant amount of mana to break through the barrier. Of course, Hellfire had only just begun. Ka! Jin roared, elevating his mana by a level. He completely dispelled the remaining shadow energy curtain and unleashed the flames bound within. The flames erupted like a torrent. In an instant, the cave transformed into a hellish scene of voracious fire, and the protective shield of the Spectres was completely engulfed in flames, with their magical essence not visible. The rocks inside the cave melted. Runcandle's magic sword technique, Hellfire, bore an astonishing resemblance to the Plutonian god of battle's rain sword, covering a substantial area. Instead of lightning bolts, flames covered all directions, creating a fiery space in which those who hadn't reached a certain level couldn't even breathe. In reality, 1,000 years ago, Timar's council played the most crucial role in completing Sarah's magic sword, and Timar's council was derived from the Sword of Legends. All the flames filling the cave were heading towards the Spectres. "Damn it!" exclaimed a specter urgently and full of confusion. Jean felt incredibly satisfied hearing that voice. Although it was only an ambush, the fact that Hellfire was effective against the specter's body filled him with excitement. Feeling oneself grow stronger always brings a sense of joy. There's no way their shields can handle this. Crack! In the midst of the blazing flames, a single blue spark emerged. Hellfire was originally a martial art that used the power of the Phoenix. Although Sarah, from the second tomb, couldn't use the Phoenix Manière power as a guardian, Jean had Tess. Gah! While a single blue flame opened the dimensional door to the fire dimension, accompanied by a sharp but sonorous roar, the Phoenix King was revealed. The power symbolizing blue and pressure, Tess's power. When this power combined with Hellfire, the specters groaned. And as soon as Jean heard their groans, he was certain. He could kill them. There's no problem with an aura shield or a martial artist's sword shield. But once a mage's shield is broken, it's difficult to catch what comes next, because they didn't have physically robust bodies like martial artists. Therefore, when mages were directly hit, their abilities inevitably diminished significantly. Jean had exploited the advantage. Now, to prevent their bodies from burning, he forces them to manipulate mana recklessly, causing a backlash. Just like the absolute proposition that all humans die, reckless mana manipulation always led to a backlash. Not even the specters could escape that law. However, Jean assumed that the members of the Spectre Corps had the ability to quickly recover from mana backlash. Their ability to control the backlash may not be as good as the Masters, but there's a good chance that the Spectres can stabilize their mana within the 5 seconds after the initial symptoms of the backlash. He would cut them down before they could grasp the backlash. Making a quick decision, Jean found the Spectres' figures among the flames. Jean had only seen their silhouettes since his arrival, and he hadn't even seen their gray robes clearly. He could only guess their position and attack based on the energy the specters emanated and their silhouettes. At the moment their energy fluctuates due to the backlash, I'll attack and finish them off. I don't have much time left either. Jean was in a precarious state where he could suffer from backlash at any moment. It was quite strange that such a grand technique suddenly unleashed, especially alongside the somber force curtain, and yet there was no backlash. Even so, time was on Jin's side. Before a minute passed, he could feel the specter's mana decreasing significantly. The energy emanating from the specters, which had even made his face taut after breaking through the barrier, had descended to the level of an ordinary mage. It was the result of the mana backlash. Jean plunged into the flames. As Tess exhaled a breath of pressure, the hellfire flames gently receded, creating a path. Step by step, as Jean advanced, the specters concealed their bodies within the flames. You shouldn't have moved at all. Swoosh! Jean spoke, swinging his sword toward where he sensed movement. A cynical smile on his lips. Quack! A clear sensation of flesh and bone being severed transmitted to Jin's fingertips through the blade of his sword. The specters desperately stifled their groans, but it was an action that lacked real meaning. Their positions were already exposed, and the battle was over. Bam! Jean, his eyes radiating a fiery gleam, lunged in the direction he had swung his sword. I've gained the advantage, but since there are 3 of them, I can't waste time and I need to finish quickly. During the 5 seconds it took for the specters to suppress the mana backlash, Jean knew he had to eliminate all 3 of them. Zaz! Sigmund's sword pierced the chest of a member of the Spectre Corps. Kook! It was the final cry before death. The mage was engulfed by the flames surrounding Sigmund, reduced to ashes. It was an incredibly miserable death for the most elite secret magician of Zippel. It also meant how extraordinary Jean was. Excluding Luna, there was no other brother who could achieve such a result in the same situation. Although there was an element of surprise attack, the opponents were the specters. Now there are 2 left. Phew! Jean took a breath. His body, enveloped in flames, was becoming unbearably hot, and it seemed that the backlash would start soon. 3 seconds remained. Among the flames, Jean had enough time to find the 2 mages caught in the backlash and cut their throats. But as soon as he was about to move again, Jean felt a strange unease. What's going on? I've only killed one of them, but the rest of the Spectre's mana has completely disappeared. He quickly scanned the flames. For some reason, he couldn't find the two remaining members of the Spectre Corps, excluding the one who had died. Where could they have suddenly gone? It's unlikely they went back to the barrier. It seemed like the powerful mana belonged to the only deceased member. Jean came to a sudden stop. Could it be that it wasn't the combined mana of the three? What Jean had killed was only one of the three members of the Spectres. The other two members had successfully crossed the barrier into another secret residence of the Cat tribe and had just entered the cave. Jean had mistakenly believed that the mana he felt from the Spectre Corps member he killed with Hellfire belonged to all three. Boom! Once again, Jean felt a powerful mana coming from beyond the suddenly shattered barrier. Feeling a chill down his spine, Jean turned his head and saw the other two members of Spectre Corp emerging from the broken barrier. This is madness. Unlike the recently deceased Spectre Corps member, these two had already confirmed the flames unfolding inside the cave, even from beyond the barrier. It was natural because the mana of Hellfire was not concealed by the shadow energy curtain. It seems Lakai was taken down. Here, this is his staff. The flames are dying down. The one who killed Lakai probably isn't in perfect condition either. He probably couldn't have gone far. Before tracking down those insect-like beast men, we should first pursue that person. Jin's gaze met the eyes of the specters concealed beneath their gray hoods. There's no need for that. Jean Runcandle, you are the one who killed Lakai. A satisfied smile spread across the lips of the specters, hidden beneath their gray hoods. Chapter 337. Debt, debts, and more debts. 4. The mana gathered in the hands of the specters was so swift that it seemed to have suddenly materialized within their reach. However, the accumulated mana was so immense that it distorted the surrounding space. Jean instinctively conjured a protective shield, suppressing a sigh of disbelief. Whoosh! If he had deployed the shield just a second later, he wouldn't have been able to face tomorrow morning's rising sun. The mana beam emitted from the hands of the two specters struck Jin's shield, composed of shadow energy and mana. Even with the shield in place, it felt like he was being pummeled by an unstoppable force. Jean deflected the rays that penetrated the shield, but a thick splatter of blood rose up his throat. Weeing. Jean coughed up a clot of blood and composed himself. Damn it. So this is what the specters are capable of. The fact that Jean could swiftly kill a specter named Lakai was the result of a perfect ambush. As demonstrated by his confusion, mistaking Lakai's mana for that of three individuals, the specters were originally the most formidable group of magicians in the world. They were incomparable, even with other magician units. And you managed to block that? 12th Flagbearer Runcandle. It seems what those guys said when they went to Lord Baradin's secret mansion was true after all. Maybe I was complacent, but it wasn't just luck that you killed Lakai. Indeed, hearing about it and experiencing it firsthand are entirely different things. Jean observed the two men while regulating his breathing. Both of them are on a similar level to the mage Lakai, whom I just killed. They didn't belong to the intermediate or later stages of the 9 stars. If they weren't from the 10 stars, it was unimaginable to explain this vast mana. No, it might be difficult to explain even with the 10 stars. There was a vast difference between the 9 and 10 stars, but it wasn't as if the mana level tripled. Jean had already encountered several 9-star mages, and although he hadn't personally met a 10-star one, he could roughly estimate the level based on comparisons with knights and warriors. Considering it from that perspective, there was certainly something unusual about the specter's mana. What are you thinking, Jean Runcandle? Weeing. Once again, a mana beam shot out from the mage's hands. Arg. This time, Tess unleashed a wave of oppressive flames, distorting the trajectory of the beam, and Jean quickly erected a shield of shadowy force to protect himself. Do you plan to fight us instead of fleeing? How foolish. The specters I encountered last time weren't as talkative. You guys sure like to chat. In an instant, 5 curtains of shadow energy were deployed. Jean continued to evade the attacks of the mages by concealing his body within the curtains. At first glance, it appeared that Jean was effectively opposing the specters, but there were no signs of a counterattack. I can't use my shadow energy properly due to the backlash. I wonder how long I can drag this out. The obvious choice Jean should have made when encountering the two remaining specters was to immediately summon Shuri and flee. However, the reason Jean didn't run when facing the new specters was another. If he fled now, the small insect-like beastmen who had just started emerging from the cave would undoubtedly be annihilated. I can't hold out much longer. Tessa's summoning is also about to dissipate. Tess could only exist in the presence of Jin's mana. As the mana backlash began, Tessa's state became increasingly unstable. Unlike when they faced Frosty Joe in the past, Tess couldn't directly intervene by borrowing Jin's power in the current situation. Unlike before, Jean was on the brink of mana backlash, so if Tess mistakenly borrowed his power, it could endanger her life. In the end, Tess had no choice but to return to the fire dimension in a few seconds. But there was one thing. There was a way to salvage this situation. Jean wanted to use the special technique of the Shadow Blade, the Black Light Call, to summon the Black Light Call. Even an ordinary warrior, not just a battle king, could easily buy time against the two specters. But he wanted to save the Black Light Call for the worst-case scenario. Zipple didn't know that Jean could summon the legends, and if they found out, they would be even more cautious about facing Jean in the future. A trump card should always be saved for when it's truly necessary. In the future, there would be many decisive moments where Jean could outwit Zipple with the help of the Legend Brothers. Moreover, in Jin's opinion, the situation was not yet at its worst. Whichever side it is, hurry up and come. Either Runcandle or Kinzalo. One of the two factions had to come to this cave. Otherwise, not only the cave but the entire area would soon be destroyed in the ongoing battle. There was a high possibility that Kinzalo would arrive first. This land belonged to the Beastmen. Quang, clang, crash. The cave collapsed under the onslaught of the specter's mana rays. Jean was not aware of it, but the truth was that more than half of the vast labyrinth inside the cave had already been destroyed when the barrier broke. The continuous shocks caused an incessant rain of falling rocks, and the rays had pierced the roof, exposing the sky. At that moment, the specters must have been extremely frustrated. The specters were annoyed that the 12th flag-bearer of Runcandle was resisting them for so long even though he had fallen into mana backlash, and his phoenix had also returned. It hadn't been that long, just a few minutes. I wanted to take you in good shape, but I guess I'll have to force it. Wish, wish. Swyish. A new magical spell began to intertwine in the hands of the specters. Each of them was forming 2 9-star destruction spells. It was Zipple's vision magic, something Jean had never seen before. Both of them were performing simultaneous casts. Judging by your appearance, it seems you'll survive even if you take this hit. Is that so? It seems you've overestimated me. Jean smiled as he dodged the attack. No, if anything, we've underestimated you all along. And it doesn't matter if you die. With a determined expression, Jean gritted his teeth. It seemed that, after all, he would have to summon the Plutonian brothers. Let me propose one last deal. When my brothers arrive, there's a chance you won't make it out of here alive. What do you say? Let's end it at this point. This, after all, could turn into an all-out battle with one wrong move. It was nothing more than idle talk to gain a few more seconds, until the end. By the time the flag-bearers of Runcandle arrive, you'll already be in the Lutero-Magical Federation. I didn't know you had a talent for jokes. The flag-bearers weren't really his brothers, but there was no need to correct them. You should work on your sense of humor if you want to endure jokes. What's the use of being powerful in magic if you can't do anything else? It's inhumane. Don't be so arrogant. And let me tell you something in advance. The specter shrugged and continued with his remark. The only reason you're holding out here is probably to save the little beastmen, right? Well, that doesn't matter much. At this point, others have probably gone to capture those damn cosmetics peddlers. The barrier of the cat tribe was quite interesting. Things are more troublesome than you think. A total of 5 specters attacked the cat tribe's barrier. However, the reason Jean decided to face these three specters was that Lulu had informed him that she had stopped the other two just before leaving. The other two are trapped in our labyrinth and can't get out. They'll be trapped for at least 3 days, Lulu had clearly said. But the specters were stronger than the cat tribe had anticipated. They had unleashed their unique magic of link casting, erasing the entire barrier and entering this place. In the process, there had been a problem with the barrier, and the other two had entered the land of the beastmen outside the cave directly. Darn it, if the barrier has collapsed, is the cat tribe safe? It's not the time to save the black light call. Jean let out a frustrated sigh. And just as he was about to unleash the black light call, bam! Unexpectedly, a large steel door formed between Jean and the specters. The sound of the steel door hitting the ground was so beautiful that there would never be another moment like it in Jin's life. Hello, everyone. The first voice that sounded was cheerful and lively. To Jin's knowledge, the most eccentric woman. It was Margiela Iviliano. She was seated in a wheelchair, as always, and wearing a whimsical cat face-shaped mask. Does she really think she can hide her identity with that? Everyone knows there's a disabled woman in the Iviliano clan. Surprisingly, the specters didn't recognize Margiela. Who are these guys? The specters looked at Margiela with strange expressions. They didn't attack immediately, but it seemed that Margiela's arrival through the steel door was quite perplexing to them. Nice to meet you all. I'm Mariella Starr. In short, I'm the owner of these lands. Note, yes, she's using an alias, and by her side was another familiar face. Specters? There might be some old acquaintances among them. How's Lakai doing? That piece of trash. Joe the Cold. He chuckled with a mocking smile as he looked at the specters. Although Jean had personally fought against Joe and knew he was at a level where he couldn't dare to underestimate the specters, there was another reason why Joe was so confident. Joe, shut up. I'm sure I've warned you several times not to support me and act tough. Damn trash, try to at least be half as good as the vice leader. I feel like killing you several times a day. Barak Sidricker, the great warrior of the White Wolf tribe and one of Kinzelo's key members. The reason Joe could smile at the specters despite facing them. Boy! Yes, that guy is pretty strong. Not even the safety of your older sister would be guaranteed against him. A conversation between Murakan and Jean when they saw Barak, who came to pay his respects to the Holy King during the Holy Kingdom incident. True to those words, Barak was the strongest warrior among the beastmen and truly lived up to his title of Great Warrior. No need for a long conversation, human mages. I'm not in a very good mood right now, so if you don't disappear in 3 seconds, I'll swallow you whole and poop you out after 20 minutes. 1, 2, 3. Kwang. With no chance to react, after counting what seemed like 1 second instead of 3, Barak unsheathed the large sword on his back and swung it. The entire cave disintegrated in a single blow, and the specters staggered backward. Jean thought that Murakan's evaluation might have been somewhat lacking. While Barak launched his attack, Margiela wheeled her wheelchair up to Jean. Retreat quickly. And remember, this debt must not be forgotten. Understand? Margiela winked at Jean and smiled. Chapter 338. Debt, debts, and more debts. 5. Bang, Kwang, skung. Every time Barak swung his sword, the cave ceiling cut like a piece of paper, revealing the sky above. The specters focused solely on defense as soon as his attack began. Amidst the deafening clashes and roars, Margiela looked at Jean with a smile. Surely you won't pretend not to remember, like last time in the Holy Kingdom? I don't think you're someone without a conscience to that extent. Even if Jean received help, there would be no moment after today when Jean would be glad to see the group of crazies, Kinzelo. It was because Jean fundamentally saw them as madmen conducting experiments with living golems and aiming to become the sole ruler of the world like Zipfel. Of course, Jean also intended to ascend to the throne of Runcandle and become the ruler of the world, but at least he didn't use humans as mere experimental material like they did. Above all, Kinzelo was ultimately a competitor and an enemy. Debt? Since this is your territory, you should have shown up anyway. Shouldn't you? Well, how bitter. We came to rescue you. It would be a shame if those cute little beasts died. But if you weren't in danger, we wouldn't have made any move. This place isn't even that important. How did you know I was in danger? That's a trade secret. Given the abilities possessed by the leader, it wasn't particularly surprising, even if Kinselo was monitoring the entire territory through a crystal ball. Anyway, I have no intention of harboring feelings like being in debt, so spare me your nonsense. If you only came to save me, then it should be beneficial for you, so it's the outcome you chose. Humph, you make a valid point. Can't you at least make your words sound nicer? If you stumble, Lord Baract might even devour you, Sir Jean. Croc. Ah. Cough dash. The specter's screams continued. It seemed that they hadn't suffered mortal injuries yet, but Baract was completely overwhelming them. Jean chuckled. I suppose I should withdraw. And I can't say anything about Kinselo, but I'll let Aviliano make 1 or 2 small mistakes in Runcandle in the future. Hey, are you going to save the little beast men who escaped? Joe frowned as he stroked his thin beard and joined the conversation. What will you do about it? I recommend leaving if possible. We have no intention of sending people there. It means not recklessly wasting the lives we worked so hard to save. But Sir Jean, it wasn't Lord Joe who saved him. It was Lord Baract, right? Mariella. If you put it that way, won't I feel ashamed? Haha. If Lord Baract heard what you just said, he would get angry again. I worry he might actually kill Lord Joe someday. Joe scratched his head out of embarrassment. Among Kinselo's executives, Joe the Cold, the infamous 9-star magician, was almost treated as a joke. Jean didn't respond to Joe's words and exchanged a glance with Margiela for a moment. Who is this woman, even during the Holy Kingdom incident? Not much is known about her in public, but does she possess any special abilities? It seems she holds an important position within Kinselo. Probably not just because she's the beloved younger sister of Bishkal, one of Kinselo's executives. Margiela merely smiled knowingly, as if she could see through Jin's thoughts. Farewell, Sir Jean. It's been a pleasure seeing you. Whoa, nye. Jean summoned Shuri by taking a ruby from his pocket. Margiela found Shuri's appearance adorable and chuckled to herself as Jean abruptly left the place. Hey, how rude. Joe clicked his tongue and complained, but Margiela shrugged. Well, anyway, it's cool. I like that style. Jean sprinted at full speed, praying that the small beastmen hadn't been devoured by the flames yet. After running for about 10 minutes without any trace of the small beastmen, Jean felt intense anxiety. How in the world did they move so fast? I dare say there aren't many creatures on the surface that can move faster than Shuri. Maybe none. Although the battle with the specters didn't last long, he was already getting frustrated not being able to catch up to them after running for 10 minutes. Suddenly, Shuri's tracking of the small beastmen's footprints abruptly stopped. They must have moved along the river. He was at the riverbank. Jean could see how the small beastmen could move so swiftly. Splash! Shuri leaped into the river and started swimming with all her might. The watertails could swiftly move along the river as long as they had a few large leaves that grew on beastmen land, effectively using them as boats. Jean felt relieved. If they followed the river downstream, the specters wouldn't have many means to pursue them. After another 20 minutes following the river, Jean finally encountered one of the small beastmen. It was Dark Flame. Dark Flame. Oh, Jean, it's you. Dark Flame was alone in a boat made of leaves, carrying what looked like fireworks on his back. And the rest of the beastmen? They are there, fleeing, hiding. Why are you the only one who stayed behind? Something dangerous is happening. I will inform. As the leader of the Watertail tribe, Dark Flame was sacrificing himself for the sake of the other beastmen. The specters on the cave side have been taken care of. Oh, that's a relief. But 2 other specters are after you, so we shouldn't stay here. We need to regroup quickly. Hearing this, Dark Flame widened his eyes and nodded. Understood. Follow me. Come. Whoosh! Dark Flame took a deep breath, and it was incredible how much air his small body could hold. With his breath fully taken, He looked like a giant barrel about to explode. Whoosh! Splash! 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 Upon exhaling, Darkflame's wind spread out like a shockwave, significantly increasing the speed of the leaf boat. Furthermore, with the typical thin tail of the watertails, he created a water jet, making it difficult for Shuri to keep up. Maya, 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 Maya! At such a tremendous speed downstream, they soon spotted the remaining beastmen. All members of the Golden Snow tribe were on the watertail leaf boats. Oh, our comrade! You've returned alive. You've kept your promise. Peng vigorously waved his hand, shouting excitedly. Wow! Amazing! The small beastmen hugged each other tightly, shouting in joy. Jean felt a moment of pride at the sight, but he knew that things were far from over. What is that? What is it? A watertail pointed behind Jean and Darkflame. Madmen, they're the magicians. Everyone hurry, guys. Human magicians are chasing us. They turned around and saw the magicians, 2 of them dressed in gray robes. They were using wind and ice magic to follow the beastmen to the other side of the river. Just like Barton launched multiple sword strikes to propel himself in flight, they used magic to catch up to the beastmen. Everyone, lean and head for land. Jean unsheathed his sword and shouted. The specters were already aiming attack spells at them. In the river, no matter how fast they moved, they couldn't evade the attacks, and there was no way to take cover. Oh no! Save the members of the Golden Snow tribe. The Watertails quickly changed the direction of their leaf boats. Members of the Golden Snow tribe tossed all their bags and gold nuggets into the river. Zing! As the attack began, Jean leaped into the air and extended his sword. Darn it! Even though I suppressed the mana reflux during the journey, I'm still not in a condition to fight properly. He needed to use the Black Light Call. However, there was no room to unleash the Black Light Call right now. The barrage of mana bolts kept coming relentlessly, leaving him with no energy to use other techniques while facing them. As long as I buy time for the small beastmen to escape, everything will be fine. After that, I just have to call the Plutonian brothers, and it'll all be over. It was another battle against time. Would the beastmen escape first, or would Jean run out of energy? Dark Flame. Yes. Listen carefully. Once you reach the land, don't run into the forest. All of you must flee toward the open plains. If you go into the forest, they'll set it on fire completely. Understand? Understood, yes. Fortunately, the river was narrow, so the small beastmen quickly got to dry land. In response, the specters swiftly crossed the river to reposition themselves toward Jean and the beastmen. But even during the shift, the bombardment of mana bolts continued unabated. They used various spells to cross the river simultaneously, so they haven't been able to unleash their attacks fully yet. However, once they're on land, they won't be able to attack all the beastmen with mana bolts. Not only that, after they no longer needed mana to move, one wizard would shoot bolts while the other prepared significant magic spells. Given the circumstances, Jean had no choice but to unleash the Black Light Call, even if it meant some of the small beastmen would die. How many innocent and kind beastmen would lose their lives? As he wrestled with these thoughts, a subtle vibration emanated from the direction of the forest where the small beastmen were fleeing. It felt like a faint earthquake, as if a massive creature was running amok. What's happening? It seems these vibrations are created by a giant creature running. In that moment of contemplation, Jean realized the source of the vibration. We've located the wizards. We've confirmed the presence of the 12th flag-bearer. The vibration came from the charge of over 50 Runcandle Guardian Knights running at full speed. They were brimming with energy, causing such a significant vibration. Led by Jin's brothers, of course. My younger brother? Were you fighting these guys alone to protect the beastmen? Runcandle's 7th flag-bearer and 3rd daughter, Mary Runcandle, spoke. All Guardian Knights, protect the 12th flag-bearer and the beastmen. 4th and 5th squads, each take a group of beastmen and lead them to safety. The 4th flag-bearer of Runcandle, the second son, Dyphus Runcandle, gave the orders. They had been waiting at the main Runcandle family house until they received news of massive mana detected in the Zhan Kingdom. Upon hearing the news, they hurried to come. They seem like the most elite magicians, but they don't seem to have any shields. Anyway, the youngest, you look pretty impressive in this situation. The appearance of the new Runcandle flag-bearers made the specters hesitate and adjust their stance. With this, I've repaid the debt from the mission. To kill the Black Knight, Jean. Dyphus positioned himself next to Jean and said, Dyphus's greatsword, Volgar, and Mary's chain sword, Viper, emitted unique glows, each with its own vibrant aura. Chapter 339. Debt, Debts, and More Debts. 6. The Guardian Knights of the 4th and 5th groups quickly divided their forces and took charge of the Beast Men. The remaining knights, undaunted, formed their formation and began their search. Their sharp, gleaming swords surrounded the specters, and the aura emanating from the knights seemed capable of killing the magicians on the spot. They were the most loyal knights of Mary and Dyphus, all of whom were soon to be promoted to execution knights. The rank just below that of the Black Knights, meaning they were skilled knights one level below the Black Knights. This is a tough situation even for the specters. With just elder brother Dyphus and elder sister Mary, it's already a headache, and now we have more than 50 execution knights. Unlike Jean, Mary and Dyphus had been flag-bearers for a long time. Naturally, the knights following them were exceptional veterans, unlike Jin's group, mainly composed of high-level rookies. The specters stopped their attack and assumed a defensive stance. They had been expecting Runcandle's arrival, but not this quickly. Their plan didn't account for Jin's presence, let alone the barrier of the Cat tribe, or even Barak Sidricker. Their original plan was simply to gather and crush the Beastmen haggling over money and leave the place before Kinslow and Runcandle arrived. However, everything went awry from the start. The barrier erected by the Cat tribe was so solid that it took them 2 days to break through, and even then one of the 5 members died initially. And it was at the hands of the 12th flag-bearer of Runcandle. However, at first they thought they had gotten lucky when they saw Jean. Capturing Jean alive and taking him away was much more valuable to Zippel than killing the Beastmen and destroying their cosmetics business. But in the end, as the current situation showed, it was all a disaster. Now, it wasn't about destroying the cosmetics business or capturing Jean. The top priority was to escape safely from Runcandle territory and return home. The 2 specters present here didn't know that had become difficult too, because the specters inside the cave had already become Barak's dinner. Youngest one. Amidst the tense atmosphere between the Guardian Knights and the specters, Mary called out to Jean in a light voice. Why are you here? Weren't you supposed to handle the mission of rescuing some duke or count from the Ekin Kingdom? I'm sure I saw you off on your mission. Though aware that the magicians before her were monstrous beings of at least 10-star level, she only felt a slight sense of danger, as if she had encountered a boar while climbing a hill. Of course, for an ordinary person, even that would be overwhelming terror, but for someone like Mary, it was nothing more than the feeling of encountering a bountiful meal. Well, Mary smiled in satisfaction. Is something the matter? Big sister, do you remember the agreement we made last time? That we'll fight once every 3 months? The winner is determined by knockout, and the loser must fulfill a request from the winner. Of course, we'll draft a contract to ensure there are no misunderstandings. That sounds intriguing, although the contract might be a bit complicated. Mary nodded, reminiscing about the excitement of that day. Let's say I won that time, and you have to follow one of my orders. Mary's eyes widened at Jin's words. What? But if I recall, that was a tie. All right, this big sister will let it slide. Who would let you get away after you scattered those mana bombs in a surprise attack? Come on, help me out. I'm already helping you. No one here has seen me today. Mary narrowed her eyes. When she didn't respond immediately, Jean wondered if he had been too impolite. But Mary was savoring the moment. She liked her younger brother's audacity. It was always refreshing and invigorating. How dare you look at me like that, brat? Do you think I'm someone who would rat out my little brother or something? Huh. I didn't mean that. Then why do you suddenly come up with a pointless request like this? You and I are family. Blood ties. Not all siblings always look at you with disdain like Mew and Anne. This time, Jin's eyes widened. He had never considered that he would hear such words from his other siblings, except for Luna and Yona. Of course, Jin didn't dislike Mary, but he always tried to keep a certain distance, thinking that getting too close might turn them into enemies. I'll make sure to silence those guys, and if necessary, I'll prevent information from reaching the elders. Don't worry, and return to the clan. And you, Oriboni? What? Oriboni, you should do the same. All right. Dyphus had already planned to do so, even without Mary saying it. After all, it was a way to repay the debt when he was saved by Jean. They had come without knowing Jean was here, during his mission to assassinate the Black Knight. Well, I think we're done talking. Let's meet at home, little brother. Oh, and about our agreement to fight once every 3 months, it's about time, so be prepared. Got it. Of course. Mary quickly turned around and called out to the specters behind her. You'd better not expect to leave here alive. Instead, I'll kill you in the least painful way possible. It looks like it's going to be a fun fight after a long time. Goo! Mary's entire body began to be dyed in aura. The aura waves made her hair flutter around her ears, and the ground beneath her feet cracked under the pressure. When we fought, it wasn't like this at all. The aura Mary emitted was enough for everyone nearby to feel a tingling sensation. Mary had a secret. She had also improved and given her name to one of the clan's final moves. Most surprisingly, it wasn't the clan elders who allowed it, but the clan patriarch himself, Siren Runcandle. Is this a volcano? No, it's something different. The 7th Runcandle final move that Jean saw on Island 32. The aura Mary was emitting was very similar. From its appearance, it was clear she was unleashing a variation of the volcano. But what she unleashed wasn't a suicidal attack. Now I understand why my father always seemed to have high expectations for elder sister Mary. Just by looking at Mary's back, Jean felt chills. Undoubtedly, she was someone you couldn't call weaker than Luna or even Joshua or Luncia. However, everyone agreed that if they had to choose the opponent they least wanted to fight, it would undoubtedly be Mary. She had the power to wear down opponents with her fierceness, regardless of the level difference. It looks like Mary is quite angry. It wouldn't hurt to wish the specters a peaceful rest in advance. Dyphus also prepared his final move as he spoke. Is it because they invaded Runcandle territory? No, it's because they touched you. In the past, Jean wouldn't have thought much about Dyphus's response. Jean would have assumed that Mary was angry because the specters put her in danger, a feeling of anger arising from the enemies endangering her personal source of entertainment. But now it's different. He could feel that Mary wasn't angry for herself but specifically for him. He felt relieved because of it. If it had been any other sibling, he would never have been able to witness such a touching scene. Now go see them. Oh, and congratulations. Why are you saying that all of a sudden? With Zippel's invasion this time, your cosmetics business will flourish even more. That's what I meant. Young Master Jean. As always, it was Petro's urgent voice that first welcomed Jean upon his return. I thought you'd come rushing to find me today. What's happened this time? Have I caused an accident unknowingly? It's not that, young master. While you were on your mission, a commotion broke out. A secret unit of Zippel's magicians called the Spectre Corps attacked the Jean Kingdom, and it seems the motive was to destroy your cosmetics business. What? My business? Pretending not to know, Jean responded calmly. Seeing the atmosphere, it seemed that Mary and Dyphus had kept their promise. They didn't reveal that Bellup had gone on a mission disguised as Jean. They sent elite magicians just to destroy an insignificant cosmetics business? Yes, that's why an emergency meeting was called. Young master, please come quickly. What happened to those damn magicians? The 4th and 7th flag bearers took care of them. Are both of them unharmed? Jean asked, concealing his expression. Yes, young master. I heard that both of them only suffered minor injuries. Along with the apprehension of the invaders in our territory, no one in Zippel could have ever imagined that the Spectre Corps would lose 5 of its members like this. 3 to Runcandle and 2 to Kinslow. I hate to admit it, but I guess I surprisingly get along with those lunatics this time. Jean sighed in relief. Regardless of anything else, he was grateful that Mary wasn't seriously injured. Now might be the time for my business to take off. Dyfus's final words in the Jean Kingdom were something Jean had foreseen. Zipple had sent a unit of elite secret magicians into Runcandle's territory to sabotage the business run by the Runcandle flag-bearer. It was an act that could be considered a significant invasion, or even a declaration of war. No, it had to be. Couldn't be overlooked. Click. As Jean entered the conference room, he saw all the flag-bearers and elders gathered. They glanced at him briefly and then resumed their conversation among themselves. These damn bastards. Are they looking down on us? From today, the Black Sword Association will attack each of their magical product production centers and exterminate them all. Indeed, Elder President, Zipple's actions are nothing less than the Black Knights invading the Lutero Magical Federation. Those damn bastards have done something that can't go unpunished. Even civilians could have been harmed. Where did the war treaty go? The 12th flag-bearer was their most wanted person, but we can let this slide. If we let it pass without retaliation, the entire world will ridicule Runcandle. Even if the whole world ridicules them, Zipple will still feel bitter about Runcandle not retaliating. It was natural to feel that way after losing their top 5 magicians so shamefully. In reality, Runcandle had already gained an unimaginable advantage. However, Jean wasn't satisfied with that level of success. Elders, may I say something about this situation? As soon as he spoke, all eyes turned toward Jean. Chapter 340. Debt, Debts, and More Debts. 7. The elders' eyes were filled with anger. If anyone dared to provoke them even the slightest, it seemed as if they would tear them apart on the spot. Of course, this anger wasn't directed at Jean, who had dared to interrupt the elders and speak. It was anger directed at Zipple. Most of the elders had some degree of dislike for Jean, or at least held some animosity toward him. They were knights who had dedicated their entire lives to Runcandle. Regardless of whether they were pureblood, branch families, subordinate families, or outsiders, they all had one thing in common: overwhelming hatred and resentment toward Zipple. After decades of fighting against Zipple, it was only natural for them to feel this way. Most of the elders had memories of losing family members, comrades, or loved ones due to Zipple's actions. "What's going on, 12th flag-bearer?" Jordan shouted with bloodshot eyes. "First of all, I want to apologize for any unfortunate incidents caused by me. No need for useless words. Get to the point. We must not retaliate." Upon hearing this, the elders' eyes widened. Other flag-bearers present in the meeting room also looked equally amazed, staring at Jean. "What did you say? 12th flag-bearer? What is this nonsense?" Jordan took brisk steps toward Jean. He got so close that their noses almost touched, and he looked at Jean with an oppressive aura. The atmosphere among the other elders was no different, as they seemed equally intimidating. "Do you realize what you're saying?" "Yes, I do." "You better take responsibility and give a reasonable explanation. Otherwise, I'll cut your arm off right here. It seems like a lot of people are after my arms these days. However, fortunately, no one has taken them away from me yet." "Don't be cheeky. Do you really think your words are correct in this situation? If you listen to my words until the end, even the elder president will agree that I'm right. When I said not to retaliate, I meant purely physical retaliation." "Physical retaliation? Are you saying we shouldn't attack Zipple's magical product production centers?" "That's right." While Jean responded without flinching, sighs of disbelief echoed throughout the room. How could a flag-bearer make such a scandalous statement? No wonder they despised him. "Tsk." The elders gritted their teeth. As he looked at them, Jean silently thought, are they out of their minds? Or have they gotten older and are a bit confused, taking this golden opportunity to start a fight they can't win? The elders weren't the only ones stunned. Jean was equally surprised by their simplistic plan. "Tell me, why do you think like this? Isn't it clear? If we touch their magical product production centers and a large-scale war breaks out, what would you do? Do you think we can win? What nonsense! I'm speaking realistically. Can we defeat Zippel? Can we fight against them right now, crush them, and make the world ours? There was a moment of silence. Everyone knew the answer, but it was a question that no one could answer. The Patriarch and the strongest flag-bearer are absent, and the same goes for the former Black Knights. In this situation, if we start a war with Zippel, the likelihood of us shedding blood is much higher. Even if Runcandle's most powerful swords, which had headed to the Black Sea, were still guarding their original positions, it wouldn't make any difference. Runcandle couldn't defeat Zippel. At least not for the moment. The reason Siren Runcandle, despite being the divine Star Knight, didn't engage in total war with Zippel, "I don't have much time," was for this one reason. It wasn't the time to discuss things that couldn't or shouldn't be executed. My father has been silent for a reason all this time. Yes, Jordan and the elders are aware of that fact. They just struggle to control their anger. They were acting like children. They were eager to taunt their opponent but lacked the power to do so. So Jean had to calm them down and guide them in a better direction. Touching the enemy's most critical facilities in such a situation is a shortcut to doom. Also, have we really suffered any losses? I never said we haven't had losses. How do you know? I received a report from my steward on my way here. The 4th and 7th flag-bearers killed some of them, and our side only suffered minor injuries. Moreover, a moment ago one of the elders mentioned that there could only have been civilian casualties. Doesn't that mean there were no civilian casualties? Jordan was momentarily speechless. He knew Jin's words were correct, but he didn't want to hear anything from that wretch. Therefore, we should view their recent attack as a great victory for our side. We haven't suffered any losses, but Zippel has lost some of its undisclosed elite magicians. Clang. Jordan gritted his teeth so hard it seemed like he was going to chew Jean up. What do you suggest then? Are you trying to say that no matter what happens on the surface, as long as we get a great victory? The reason Jordan was so furious was none other than this. The decision to attack Zippel's magical product production facilities was aimed at helping Jean, whose wings Jordan always wanted to clip. Despite knowing this, Jordan had reluctantly given in to anger, but now it seemed that Jordan was about to explode. Moreover, they're not fools to go to total war just because we destroyed some facilities, even when other factions are watching for an opportunity. As you said, the likelihood of Zippel starting a total war is slim. But there's always a possibility, and most importantly, it means there are more efficient forms of retaliation available in the current situation. More efficient retaliation? Jordan narrowed his eyes. It's about turning public opinion against Zippel. Ha! Is that what you're trying to say after all this? The best you can come up with is waging a war of public opinion. They invaded our territory, and you're talking about waving a pen and playing word games. It was the reaction Jean expected. Please, calm down and listen, Elder President. You're angry because you have to fight for me, someone you despise. But in the end, you'll come to understand that my plan is the best. Jean spoke as Jordan looked at him in silence. You should know well how much influence Zippel's magical products have in the world. We've also been suffering due to the recent absence of their magical products, causing inconvenience to civilians. After the Holy Kingdom incident, Zippel completely cut off the supply of magical products to the Huphester Alliance. Although they imported everyday magical products through the black market and smuggling, the supply was insufficient compared to before. In a situation like this, hitting Zippel's production facilities means abandoning public opinion. Although our clan has never cared about such things, now it's necessary. Recently, there's a trend where the title of the world's greatest villain is shifting from Runcandle to Zippel. After the Holy Kingdom incident, Zippel's image deteriorated day by day. The benevolent Zippel has become a thing of the past. On the other hand, Runcandle was showing significant positive changes. The image of respected Runcandle was maintained, but now it was also perceived as the only major faction that didn't experiment on humans or recklessly interfere with neutral countries like the Holy Kingdom. All of this was undoubtedly thanks to Jin's efforts. We need to continue influencing this trend. The virtuous beast men who manufacture cosmetics, Zipple, who attempted to massacre them without warning, and Runcandle's magnificent appearance. Doesn't everything fit together perfectly? Forming public opinion, and what does that mean in terms of retaliation against Zipple? If a positive public opinion about Runcandle forms, that will naturally lead to greater awareness of my cosmetics. That, in turn, will translate into increased sales. And as my business grows, Zipple will appear more foolish. The reason Zipple attacked the small beast men in the first place was that the cosmetics business belonged to Jean Runcandle. It was retaliation against the cartels that boldly advertised themselves in Zipple's territory, the Lutero-Magical Federation. But even after deploying the Spectres, they hadn't managed to crush the business of a simple 12th flag-bearer. That, in itself, was humiliating for Zipple. Like what the 4th and 7th flag-bearers did recently. From now on, please protect my business. And I request clan-level support. It's becoming increasingly absurd. Protecting my business at the clan level will be a clear message of Runcandle's contempt for Zipple. And during this process, there will naturally be small battles. There will be no problem in killing Zipple at that time. Jean smiled slightly as he looked at Tellot. Tellot had promised to advance Jean, but for some reason he had remained silent. Why is Lord Tellot keeping quiet? He should intervene moderately, and then the elder president would have no choice but to back down a bit. However, Jean soon understood the reason. Do as he says. A sharp and dignified voice affirmed Jin's opinion. It was Rosa Runcandle, the Black Panther and Jin's mother. When Rosa spoke, the chaotic atmosphere in the meeting room instantly calmed. We will protect your business. It seems you are right. Taking more precautions would be best. However, from today, the clan will take 20% of your business's profits. Upon hearing Rosa's words, a faint smile appeared on Tellot's lips. No deception. If you faithfully dedicate 20% of the profits every month, I will do my best to support your business. And it may not be impossible to completely eliminate the current suspended disciplinary measure. The 20% mentioned by Rosa had already been decided when Jean had the first conversation with Tellot. As soon as Tellot heard the rumor that the Spectres had attacked the small beast men, he went directly to Rosa and concluded the conversation in which she would ask Jean for the 20%. Furthermore, I will completely eliminate the current suspended disciplinary measure against you. Remember, it's not because of your achievements, but because of the situation. There are no undeserved favors. Especially when it comes to a relationship like this with my mother, there is never an undeserved favor. She must be trying to make me owe her something. Jean had a hunch that Rosa wanted something from him.